What is up, party people? So it's gonna be a new one. Gotta do some adjustments and fixes to my, I don't know why my meat's hanging up wasn't working. So I decided, F it, we'll use Discord, seeing how it's like everyone's doing it these days. So if you guys want to join the panel, then it will be on the my bunker, or at the bunker. I put the link in the chat. I'll put it in there again. And then that way you guys can join if you like it. If you're not, hey, it's your cup of tea. I'll give you guys a link to power to talk, and I also have the power to take, so go ahead and join that if you want to join the link. So far I got Sean here, but what we were doing, we were just BSing. He's cooking dinner and stuff, so I'm not sure if he's going to jump on right now, but what up? Thank you there. So make sure everyone heard it. Yep, okay, I know everyone can hear. There we go. So now like I said, yesterday we had a good conversation, help out Crash. If you guys can do that, that still goes along the way. I didn't get to hear too much of Jose's. I'm not sure if he ended up doing the meet hangout or not, and getting a one-on-one, but the beginning of it was quite how do you say, new. What's up, Barney? How you doing, sir? Make sure you
Hello.
Yeah, there you go. I hear you. Yeah, this is new, so if I mess it up, don't yell at me. I'm just getting used to this as well.
Sean, what the fuck
it's
are
my
you
first
doing?
day.
Get off Discord now.
How you doing, Barney?
Hello.
I figured you actually enjoyed the other stream that we were on because it stayed topic based. I was like, Barney's here. He's gonna enjoy this one.
Yes. The Graviton one?
Yep. Yeah, yesterday wasn't the biggest viewed, but to me it seemed to be the biggest topic. But I decided today would be a good idea to let's go live stream, like open topic, just whatever flows, because it seems that there are thousands of things people want to talk about. It's kind of hard to pinpoint people on one all the time, right? So we'll see how this one goes. Let me see. Okay, make sure that chat's working. Like I said, I'm getting used to the whole doing this online with the Discord, so I don't know how it works, and I don't know if it's supposed to switch over or lag or anything, so we'll see. But yeah, that's the gist of it. What do you guys want to talk about? It's weird not doing open topics. I haven't done one in so long now.
It's windy out. That's all I wanted to say.
Oh, I know what I want to talk about. So we get solar winds, right? Or we get our electromagnetic field blocks us from most of it, but we do occasionally get these solar winds that can have like an EMP effect, right?
Well, there is a constant solar wind that gets deflected by our magnetic field. Yes.
Wait,
and
it's a
there are
constant.
flares in our
You mean it constantly happens, or it is
it constantly happens.
Okay.
Yes. And when there are flares on the sun that are in our general direction, then the amount of charged particles intensifies so much that it causes radio disturbance and electromagnetic disturbance.
I see. And then does that? How was I going to ask it? So what? How much of the whole EU thing do you know about? Enough, like, if I asked a question about this whole plasma thing.
some of it makes a little bit of sense, but you know that I can find sense in flat Earth, so this makes more sense. But all of it is on very, very, very shaky ground. Like, same thing. Picking through very specific scientific data to support their conclusions and just ignoring the else.
So
is it true that the vacuum of space is filled with plasma? Yes.
But to what degree?
Very, 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 very extremely thin.
Now, is it the same? See, this is what confuses me about that. Is that the same degree as in how like Grimm speaks about plasma? Like, does it actually have those effects? Like he keeps saying, like for instance, the Hubble's constant. He says that, or the redshift. He says that plasma affects light the same way. Thus, meaning if we're seeing stars in redshift, we may not be seeing stars actually in redshift. It just may be a plasma or whatever in front of it.
Yes, to some extent, right? So my as much as I know about it, it's kind of similar to what Riley does with density and buoyancy. Does density and buoyancy affect things going down? Well, yes, it does. Like density, the density gradient, the difference between densities causes things to have a slight push up, which is proportional to the mass of the displaced air. But it's in the wrong direction and does the wrong thing. So what Grim V is pushing is kind of like that, right? Yes, that does happen. Yes, there is a prominent physicist who is kind of proposing the idea that, well, there might be something that we don't know and it might affect something in this way, right? It might be messing with our redshift estimates simply due to the vast amount of space and plasma in it. But then people like Grim V simplify that down and shorten it to conclude, well, then we can throw out all of redshift but no, it's a tiny effect.
I see. That makes sense. So it's not even something that's been observed enough to consider.
To consider as interesting and relevant, yes. To consider as therefore we don't need any of the other five forces and the universe is much smaller and the speed of light is non-constant. No, sorry, no, you not enough that you can redefine all of them around it.
Okay, it just dawned on me. Since you are such a devil's advocate-esque person, what do you think of? Did you catch BB's presentation about the mud fossils thing?
No.
You know what mud fossils is and all that, right?
What?
You don't know what mud fossils is?
No.
Oh, you're gonna love this. Hang on, let me get. I'll share something on this in the Hangout real quick so you can see. Oh, this is beautiful. You're gonna love this. So, mud fossils is basically a group that basically believes that all mountains, or not all, the majority of mountains and stuff that looks like things are actual giants. I'll share it.
No, the Nephilim crowd.
Is that what it? I don't know what they. Here, I'll share it right here. So you can see. Kind of like this. I just put something in the live stream chat part.
Live stream text. Tiny image.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not pareidolia, it's giants, guys.
But you've seen those things, right? So
I've seen multiple variations of those, yes.
and I hate even asking it. What validity do you think it would have?
But none
None at all.
at all.
But not that I'm backing it at all, because I don't believe in it either. But does the idea that I've drawn from it in what they're saying is like, they say, but back in the day, the globe was like, wasn't carbon based. Everything wasn't carbon based. And then the only other one you would think of is like a silicon based life form, but that wouldn't work.
Yes, come on. So, okay, yes, silicon-based life forms are possible, but the proposition here isn't silicon-based life form. It is completely humaniform, right? It is completely, they look completely like humans. They have 2 arms and 2 legs and a quadruped layout and 2 eyes and all of that. Like, carbon life is not that homogeneous, right? You have spiders which have 8 legs and 6 eyes. You're talking about life which is based on a completely different chemistry, which looks it looks more human than the apes, right?
Yeah.
Than our nearest nearest relative.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So no chance. No way.
And like I said, I'm not entertaining it. I just wanted to run that by people, see what they thought about it. Okay, see some people are changing. Go ahead and change the role. Good. All right, you're good, Maxwell. Hopefully, you bring good stuff to the table. Anyway,
Well, I mean, it would be something that you could feasibly think about if there were, I don't know, maybe bones or something like that would support it. But the only thing that you see is just faces and rocks because you think you see them.
yeah, exactly. And that's always what it is like. And the reason I even brought it up because I had never even heard this term, pareidolia. Is that what that is?
Pareidolia, yeah.
Yeah. See, I never heard of that before, but at the same time, it's like, how does something become that real to someone like that? That's what I don't understand. If that makes sense.
Well,
that's the way our brains are hardwired.
Yeah, well, there's cases for it where to take it to an extreme where the belief is there's cases for it that have something to do with gullibility, I guess. So that's where I see it. But I mean, we as humans, I mean, our natural reaction is to find something that looks like us.
Okay, I see what you're saying. And that's probably why it's always something that we recognize too. Like you were saying, Barney.
Right.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense, I guess. I mean, it makes sense that it happens.
Our brains are programmed to try to find faces and familiar shapes and stuff.
That's because we're all indoctrinated.
There is a huge evolutionary advantage to recognizing and reacting to faces of humans and animals in nature if you're a human in the wild, right? And there is very, very little punishment or disability caused by misrecognizing it, by looking at something that isn't a face and saying, "Ooh, that's a face," and then 10 minutes later going, "Oh, no, it isn't."
Yeah, right? Bad things don't happen when you do that. But failing to recognize that predator over there is a big problem.
Oh yeah, I see. So it's the skittish part of our brain doing it.
Yeah, but better make sure.
Yeah. Well,
It might be a giant elephant.
so would a mountain lion do this? And I know we don't know, but you know what I mean. A mountain lion doesn't have to worry. So does a mountain lion not? Would a mountain lion not have that situation happen, or is that just a what do you call it? Like not a predatoristic. What do you a prey? Like a prey thing. Like you know what I mean?
No, predators do that as well. Like a cat will jump on anything that's little and moving, like even before it sees what it is. Even like that's the same effect. Why? Because if you jump on something and it turns out it was just a leaf moving, there's no big loss for you, right? It's not a disadvantage. It's not some huge disadvantage. But if you just happen to catch a mouse, that's a huge bonus.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. But then how could you step? I mean, when you look at these things, like I haven't picked that during the screen, that like the elephant. Now the first one looks maybe more like a carved out or a Photoshop, but the elephant one, how does that come to that? Is that you know what I mean? Like a third and fourth look, it still looks like a damn elephant. Is that your brain just not letting go?
So it depends on what it would look like from other angles. Yes, from this angle, it looks very much like an elephant, though it also doesn't. Like it's misshapen and misproportioned, but like that ability of having pareidolia, of recognizing faces and recognizing shapes, is what enables us to do stylization, where we can draw for each other crude drawings or completely misproportion something and still have it be recognizable. Right? When somebody draws a caricature of you and they exaggerate your recognizable features, and you can recognize yourself in something that actually doesn't look like you at all.
I see. That makes sense now. That's weird. I don't know about you guys. I think it's weird. Let's see. And again, anybody who wants to join the panel, you excuse me, you'll have to join the bunker. The link's in the chat, and you get you going. I think Maxwell and Digital just joined in, and just so you guys know, you may have to refresh. I don't know what that's all about, but you guys are good to go now. Yeah, it's weird. Could the idea that, how do you even say it? How do you come to the conclusion that that's what it is and that's how it works? I mean, in the idea of philosophy, I guess you would say, where does it could be, and it's just this pareidolia, la 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 la. Where does that start?
So it's the principle of parsimony, right? The Occam's razor.
Okay.
It could be that there is a whole alternate history that we are completely unaware of. It could be that there is, silicon-based life, which is accidentally looks exactly like carbon-based life, even though it's based on completely different chemistry and would have completely different evolutionary pressures on it. It could be, right? But we know that pareidolia happens. You can make it happen for yourself by taking a piece of toast and punching 2 holes in it and seeing it for eyes and a smile and recognizing that as a face. That is pareidolia. So if we have an effect which is present in everybody constantly and can be manifested on demand for every human being on Earth, that explains that, then why jump to why jump to the conclusion that requires so many more assumptions, so many things unevidenced, unseen, unproven, unavailable to anybody of us at any time. But yeah, as a story, sure, you can tell that story without getting into huge contradictions. It's just very, very, very extremely unlikely.
I see. Okay, solves that problem then. Answers the question for me. Any other topics?
Talking with people who believe such things, for me, comes down to basically I have to switch into the mode of talking about Lord of the Rings, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I love the books. I know a lot about them. I've read. And there are fans which are really into it, and we can talk for hours about the intricacies of magic and theology and which creatures, like hypothesizing and weaving the world building together to tell the story which is coherent and makes sense within the world of Lord of the Rings. You can do the same thing with Flat Earth. You can do the same thing with Electric Universe. But if you have to decide what's real, there is a reason why the principle of parsimony is there, because it works. If you bet on the most probable thing, you will most likely be right.
Makes sense.
Certainly enhances your chances.
Gravitons.
Yeah, but
Gravitons?
Graviton is very much so more realistic than, say, that being an elephant.
But
No,
remember the
it's not.
disclaimer. Remember the disclaimer I made.
That is true.
You can make any claim you want about the graviton, and there is no way for someone to falsify it.
Yeah.
But this pareidolia thing can be proven against science to be factually wrong.
Well, that'd be okay. Well, then wouldn't that be under the same guides of like aliens? For instance, we are looking for aliens in how we would look for us, and maybe we haven't found them because of that reason.
Yes.
Well, here's the interesting statistic, Sean. All the rednecks with shitty cameras see aliens. All the amateur astronomers and all the probes and all of that have never encountered one single alien or UFO or anything such.
Well, that's also because you guys are looking in one small spot.
So everybody all over the world who's an amateur astronomer is looking at one spot in the sky. Bad, Sean.
Okay, wait. I have an argument for that then. Then why is it that amateurs are the more likely to find an anomaly than, say, the observatories?
Yeah, more asteroids have been named by amateur astronomers than by mainstream astrology.
Okay, now how many of those asteroids and anomalies, guessing obviously, are missed?
You know how big the solar system is, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. But that's what I mean, though. It's like you saying that no astronomer has seen it, but you guys, I mean, of all the astronomers, of all the observatories, still on any given night, you guys are still looking at a smidge, right? A less than nothing area of space at all, really. So I mean, to say we haven't seen it is and it's not always rednecks. Sometimes they're low necks. I don't know what you
Lowbrows.
It's a numbers game, Sean. I mean, for every big old professional telescope with a really hot crew of astronomers looking through that one telescope. Hell, there's thousands of guys out there with in their backyards doing it. So,
well, or actually, Blue. So, as a pilot, have you ever seen anything that was just Eh, you know what I mean?
No, nope,
But pilots
not
do.
once.
But pilots do, though.
Uh,
No, no,
Absolutely,
no. Pilots say they do. They say they do.
Yeah,
they
but
have seen something.
there are definitely stories where the guys aren't out to make money. It's not some just
Right.
off the wall story. It's really like, and they even explain it as I don't know what it was. And nowadays, the term UFO doesn't mean it was aliens. We just don't know what the f it is.
Isn't it classified as unidentified aerial phenomenon now?
I don't know. I wouldn't doubt it if they changed it. But that's the realization of it, and that's like also
Well, if you're
saying like we see every meteor that becomes a meteorite. We don't though at all, and that's that's just a gimme of how big Earth is in itself.
if you're asking, have I ever looked out and seen something I couldn't identify? Yes, I have. I mean, I, that happens all the time. You may see something off in the distance. It's clearly airborne. You don't know what it is. I mean, it's probably another airplane. It could be a balloon. It could be lots of things. All I know is I don't want to get close to it. Well, I'm never going to go over there just to look around and hope for the best. Hell no.
Yeah, I guess then that question would be more does something. Because I see exactly what you're saying. It could be a jetliner in the distance that looks like a dot, but it doesn't mean it's
Yeah.
a UFO. Yeah, but I guess
Oh hell yeah.
it'd definitely have to be the
747,
characteristics.
7 miles away is going to look like a dot.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess
I'm not going. I'm not going to go over there and play with that thing because it's going to hurt me.
Yeah. What about like? Did you have like the radar system that like you see other objects in your vicinity and all that?
Oh no.
Okay, because I know a lot of situations are like a dot would hit, but then at those times, like I don't know about how it is now, but 10, 15, 20 years ago, a flock of birds could do that, right? Could ping on a system.
The only thing radar wise I ever had in any of the airplanes I was involved with was the weather radar in a Piper Aztec.
and
And it
that's a
doesn't
radio, yeah.
that weather radar really doesn't, it's not picking up anything other than pretty much clouds. Or if you turn the tilt down, you'll pick up the ground.
Oh,
That'll give you a bit of a shock. It's like, oh shit, what is that?
I guess so. That's definitely not an everyday thing. Because that's what it's like. I've never seen anything. I mean, I've seen some stars that look like maybe they were doing some weird things, but then you got to think like you stare long enough, your eye's going to make things bounce and all that kind of crap, and you can't really stop that from happening.
Nope.
And that was weird too. Going, okay, well, that's exactly why you have to be recording it because your eyes will do crazy things. Which brings us all full circle around to these things that you see on the screen.
Yeah, I got a great statistic to share with you, Sean.
What's that?
At this current moment, at this very moment in time, Blue Marble Science has a total of 4.35 thousand subscribers.
Awesome.
Sleeping Warrior has 4.34 thousand subscribers.
Well, you have them through Truth, so that's
Sorry,
that's part
Sorry, Sloppy. I just went past you, buddy.
He's been doing it a long time.
Randy's next on the list. Yeah, Randy's next on the list.
Well, I'm sure all those guys will end up disappearing at some point or another.
See, I got a ways to go.
Randy's
Randy's at 4.64, so I need 300 more. But
that shouldn't be too hard at all.
yeah, we get that. That's about 2 weeks worth usually.
Bandy the Glober can only sub once.
So hang on. Why astronomers don't report UFOs? What's this?
I thought you might be interested in that little bit of information from 2010.
Okay, so you guys won't see it, but I'm going to share this with the YouTube screen on YouTube real quick so you can see what the hell I'm looking at. Wrong one. There. Wrong one. So why astronomers don't see stuff? Why don't they? Time made point. If astronomers rarely ever report UFOs, if UFOs really were buzzing as much as the media. See, when the media doesn't, they don't make it seem like they're flying around all the time. Astronomers would then overwhelmingly report the majority of them. We spend far more time outside looking up in pretty much at any other group of people. So why don't we see these alien spacecrafts? It says, I think this is because we almost always understand that we're seeing in the sky, so that we know not to mistake Venus, the moon, and satellites or other mundane things for flying saucers. But what if what you're seeing is a flying saucer? Okay, digital. I got one for you. What about that? They I think it was a couple years ago. They were observing and they saw something gravitational lensing, and something that was enormous. Like they can't figure that shit out. Like it doesn't make sense. I think I've even asked you that, and you said something about a dwarf planet, but they're not saying dwarf planet. They're going, we don't know.
Occam's razor, buddy. Most logical conclusion is often the right one.
Okay, so then at this point, do you understand that these astronomers, these professional astronomers, are actually putting in the alien idea as a
hypothesis?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, hypothesis is just a guess.
Okay.
Remember that.
Okay. Now, as far-fetched as this sounds to most people, there also is a recent request from, I guess it'd be some space agency, not like NASA. It was astronomer based that want funding and claim that, hey, 10 years from now, we think we will have evidence of other life. Not so much UFOs, but on other planets, I guess. If that's again numbers game, and your Occam's razor would then say there are other life out. There is life out there. Isn't that what Occam's razor would say there too?
Yes. Isn't that part of the Fermi paradox as well?
Okay, but if that is the case, then the idea of talking UFOs isn't as far-fetched as you're making it seem.
Yeah, but it's okay. So the hardest thing about this UFO thing is, one, the distance they have to travel to get to us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Their civilizations would probably be dead by the time they got here.
But see, again, now we're back to what I was saying before. We're thinking as if there is life out there, that it is like us.
Oh, no, I'm not saying they're like us. I'm saying...
Okay, but when you say... You said
the time it takes...
If the time it takes, what are you defining that on?
Well, you look at our closest star system to us. That would... I believe that's Alpha Centauri.
It is, yes, Alpha Centauri.
What's the distance? Centauri. It's Proxima Centauri is the closest, but it's the Alpha Centauri system.
4.24 light years.
Right.
So that's 4 years at the speed of light, right? Approximately.
Yes. So, considering the fastest we travel is what is it? 0.001% the speed of light is the fastest we.
Yeah, the Voyager probes are the fastest thing we've ever built, and it'll take 10,000 years to.
Okay, so how do you know that there's not a life that live longer than that?
How do I know? I don't know.
I don't know. I'm talking to Digital, because Digital's trying to said that there's no way they could ever fly here.
Unless they have light speed, no.
What if they've been advanced 1 million years longer than us?
But look, Sean, you really have to look at it with, like, if you ask questions of what if, and the only requirement is that it's possible, i.e., that it's not a direct contradiction, then as far as I know, it is possible that Beyonce will walk into my room right now and start sucking my dick. Just completely unprovoked. Right?
Lucky bastard.
For real.
It's possible. It's possible. There is no contradiction in that. Beyonce exists, my room exists, my dick exists, right? I don't know where she is right now, so there is no contradiction. Right?
I guess. I see what you're saying.
Is it possible that she's in the hallway right now? Right? If it's possible, like, if we just assume that she's in the hallway right now walking towards the door, is it possible that she's going to open that door and just start gnawing on my knob?
If she walks in, I think it's very possible. I can't think of any other reason that she would come walking on in.
Right? So if you just pose your question correctly, allowing for certain things, as long as there is no direct contradiction, yeah, it's possible. And with the unknowns, like, yeah, sure, somebody somewhere knows where Beyonce is right now, and they know that she's not in my hallway walking towards my door. Therefore, it would be a contradiction to that knowledge, or somewhere on the internet there might be information that she's on tour in, I don't know, Canada right now, or the Bahamas, whatever. So there would be a contradiction there, but I don't know it. So as long as you go to the limits of where nobody knows, then those statements of "is it possible" become very, very all-encompassing, and you can go just completely berserk.
Okay, so then, besides for actually seeing life on another planet, at what point would we have to get to for it to be no longer that way? Because I get what you're saying. The fact that there's that many planets out there, the idea of it, okay, well, then that means there must be. It's a possibility, because if that's all you're giving me and that's all we have to go off of, that's what you're going to have. So I get that. But then what would we need then? I mean, just we do see planets that would possibly look as if they stay in life.
We would need constructive information. We would need a detectable signal which can be deciphered, which enables communication and then starts communication. And right, things would need to progress in some direction.
So they're literally looking for intelligent technological life, not life.
So they're doing both, right? We might know if there is life on Mars within the next 20 or 30 years, because there are missions planned to explore those underground saltwater lakes on Mars. And if there is life, it's most likely to be there. If there is life and that life is in any way similar to ours, that's where it's.
Okay, so then see that's so. But see, that's the thing, that there's no planets around us in our solar system. Wait, no, there is. But is there? Just wait. Are there planets that look like ours in our solar system, or is it in our galaxy?
There are no planets that look like ours in our solar system.
Yeah, it's our galaxy. So
Mars is the closest one, and those Earth-like planets, they're Earth-like only in the fact that they are in the Goldilocks zone. And both Venus and Mars are also in the Goldilocks.
But isn't that only at one part? Like when they hit their perigee when they're close to the sun, aren't they not? Like, isn't there like a 200-degree difference or something like that? Or I forget.
So Venus is extremely, extremely hot, but it's not so much due to its proximity to the sun. It's not that.
Well,
Its irradiation is such that if it had an atmosphere and a magnetic field similar to Earth's, it could have liquid water. But its atmosphere is much denser.
yeah.
It has so much more stuff on it. That atmosphere is mostly sulfuric acid and water vapor. That water vapor is a powerful, and carbon dioxide. That water vapor is actually a way more powerful.
Sulfate.
What is it? Hothouse gas. What's the word? I'm missing the word in English. Never mind. Greenhouse gas, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So the temperature on the surface of Venus is 600 degrees Celsius. It's hot enough to melt lead,
Damn.
right? And the pressure is like comparable to the pressure at the bottom of an ocean.
Okay. I
It'll
get it.
just crush you. Even though it's the same size as Earth, it has a lot more effort.
So let's just BSing. If there were life on Venus, it would be like giants.
Yeah, no?
Why?
How do you come to that?
Because I'm thinking it'd have to be something that has a very, very, very strong body structure. And
Yeah, but by that account, they would be tiny because tiny things actually have much stronger structure than and much bigger physical strength compared to their size.
Yeah, like why a whale can't be on land very long.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the durability of bone, right? How much weight a bone can take is measurable. It's proportional to the cross section of bone, right? Which is an area, centimeters squared, right? And the mass that it has to carry is proportional to its volume, centimeters cubed. So the strength of your body, the weight of your body as you increase in size increases far more rapidly at a far greater rate than the strength that needs to be. Which is why grasshopper can jump 20 times its body size, while an elephant can't jump at all. It can just barely keep itself up.
Is that true? Elephants can't jump?
Yeah, elephants
very true.
can't lift all four legs from the ground.
For real? Damn, I never knew that.
That's why they had to be lifted out with balloons.
There was, those trick questions that check how you're thinking that Google was, amongst others, famous for asking in job interviews. One of those questions was, imagine that you were 1 centimeter tall and you were in a blender and you see an automated timer that the blender will turn on in 10 seconds. There's a coin in there with you and a popsicle. Save your life. Get out. How do you do it? And the correct answer is, I will jump out. Because at that scale, your muscles, by their cross section, would be strong enough to jump you out of the blender.
Okay, so I believed you guys, but I didn't believe it. I needed a source, and it is very much true. And this is the crazy. It says elephants are the only mammal that can't jump.
Well, the only legged mammal.
It just says only mammal. Okay, it says, but there are other mammals that can't either. See, that doesn't make sense. Why would it say the only mammal, and then in the next sentence say, but there are other mammals that can't either? That's literally what it says. It says,
Because the writer of the piece was brilliant.
he said, it's true that adult elephants can't jump, but there are other mammals that can't either, like sloths, hippos, and rhinos. Although, unlike elephants, hippos and rhinos can have all four of their feet off the ground at the same time. Okay, again. Okay, again. So he says, I got to reread this because I think I'm going crazy. It says, but there are other mammals that can't either, like sloths, hippos, and rhinos. And then he says, although, unlike elephants, hippos and rhinos can have all 4 feet off the ground at the same time.
So they can jump.
Well, it says when they run, but essentially, if it's a jump, right? It's a leap.
Yeah, if they're moving through the air, then yeah, then they're jumping.
Yeah, I mean they can jump.
Yeah, but not straight up and down, I think is what your article was saying.
You know, that article sounds like word salad.
Yeah,
you sure it wasn't a flat earther that wrote that?
Yeah, it may have been word salad, but he word salad the F out of it on purpose. I don't fucking Google. I think my Google's broken.
No, Sean, I think your cherry picking's broken.
No. Are you serious? I'll read it again.
No, I understood everything you said, but it was the fact that you just read out the first bit, and then you had a laugh and a giggle, and then you read the rest of it, then you had a bit of a laugh and a giggle, and then you read the rest of it and went, oh.
Yeah,
I know, but it keeps getting worse.
Yeah, that was the problem. I was like, ooh, educational. Oh, wait, what? And then he goes, educational. Oh, what? Yeah, that's why you should not do not believe everything you read coming from Independent Co. UK Voices Comment 3mythsaboutelephants.com.
No. So independent.uk is like your National Enquirer.
Ah, see? And they got the first Google link too when you put can elephants jump?
Yeah, so they'll have some stories that are true, but the most of it will just be clickbaity, bunky.
So in other words, you learned 2 things today there, Sean.
What's that?
Well, elephants can't jump, and also don't believe the Independent UK.
I didn't know you can't trust them. Let's see if this works.
But still, the elephants can't jump, right? Like white men.
It says, number 1, they can cover themselves in sand as natural sunscreen. Number 2, elephants are excellent swimmers. They use their snouts like snorkels. Number 3, elephants are one of the few mammals that can't jump. See, that was very proper English on that one.
Yeah, and we'll just leave it there.
And the elephants are the closest living relatives to the rock hyrax or some rodent. Elephants eat 600 pounds of vegetation a day, which can add up to more than 70,000 calories. Thanks for watching. Thank you. That was a good link. I'm sharing it on Discord. You guys can watch it or not. But it's very educational. Much more educational than that last link was.
So would the mud giants get really, really mad when they stepped in elephant piles?
Why? We climb on them every day, apparently. I wouldn't have ever guessed that until I heard about mud fossils and stuff. Yeah. I guess there's really not much validity to that, huh?
Yeah, no, it's not like we found any shoes or anything like that to even show that they're.
you said you said a shoe. Where are the
I don't know.
shoes?
I'm just saying, it's not like there's like a freaking, a 40-foot long spear or something like that.
That's funny. And everyone in the chat, like I said, if you guys want to join the panel,
Don't be silly. They didn't use spears. They used telepathic mind manipulation.
Why not?
Freaking lasers out of their eyes.
Yeah. Is
You
it
guys,
possible?
you know what? You guys don't know that because the CIA used to do stuff like that. Let me go to it. I'll show you.
Well, at
guys.
least you
What,
named
build
the
40-foot spears?
Yeah, but at least Sean named who they were.
Yeah. Not them. I didn't refer to them as them.
Ah, okay, so it's gender specific, is it?
Oh, of course. Of course. I don't roll like that.
You know,
That's
I'm just
so
being
rude. That's rude.
I'm just being shitty. That's all I'm doing. Is just being shitty.
I think the live
Well,
thing.
how do you know which one's their preferred pronoun?
Oh, perfect. It's working. So if you want to see what I'm looking at on YouTube, you guys can go look at it that way. But this is a fun website. This is one of the websites I used to go to all the time for my conspiratory ink. I was like, I got to do it. I like this one because it's like one of those sites that has like a few good sources, and then the rest they intermingle around it so that it's like not realistic at all. Let me see where it's like some UFO stuff.
UFOs. UFOs. Get it right.
My bad.
It is a bad because calling it UFO, right? The original person who coined the term actually said it was pronounced UFO.
Really? It's weird.
Yeah, stick that conspiracy up your butt.
FAA denied. Where does that say? FAA denies tracking UFOs. Publishes database containing UFO sightings. Pentagon corrects record on secret UFO program. Well, we know that's true. It's not even a secret anymore.
Nope.
Why would they put that much money? See, the only thing I could think of would be in the guise of it's actually military, and they got to pass it off as something else.
Yes.
Yes, what?
They're the
Just
military.
yes.
It's their job to identify the unidentified flying object.
Yeah, but I mean, like, something else. Kind of like, you guys are going to hate me for this, but like NASA.
Yeah, what about them?
Like how they're they're very in touch with the military. I think they're military. I'm going to say it right now. I think they became
Well, of course
civilian.
they were.
They became civilian so that they didn't look so military. But they were military.
Where do you think they get their astronauts from?
Yeah,
there is an American military space program.
Well, no.
We don't need NASA for that.
No,
they cooperate with NASA.
Oh, they do more than cooperate.
Yeah.
They do what they tell them to do.
Yeah, of course they do.
Yeah, when someone's paying your bills and they tell you to do something, you go, okay.
Nuh-uh.
Right?
Says you.
But by that respect, IBM is also military. They also work with the military and do what the military tells them.
Okay, and here's my reason I think this way. So the we know that NASCA, that was military. NASCA became NASA. It also was in time of the Cold War, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So at that time, it was a very, Germany was throwing the rockets up and shit. And it became a situation where if everything we do under the military guides is, testing rockets and ICBMs and all this stuff, but we don't want it to look military, so it's not like we're going to attack anybody. Blah blah blah. You make it a civilian. You make it a civilian agency, so that way now you can get more taxpayer money, and it doesn't look like you're building an arsenal rather than you trying to make it to space. In my opinion, Russia and the United States were in the race to the moon. For the guys, if you get to the moon, you can build a base there. Therefore, you have another hands up in a war. I think honestly, that's what that was about.
Yes, and that's why nobody in the world knows that the U.S. possesses intercontinental ballistic missiles, which are what what was converted into those space rockets. Right? It was developed and invented for the military, for the purpose, and they advertise it because that's what you do with that class of weapons. That class of weapons serves absolutely no purpose if you don't tell everybody that you have it.
Okay. Now, the Columbia, basically, I think the first 2 series of shuttles that they had, those were built, or better yet, the Department of Defense basically funded the majority of those shuttles being built, and they only would fund them, and they have documentation of it. It's called the relationship between NASA and the DoD, where they weren't going to fund them at all unless those shuttles were built and designed for their largest payloads and ready for any mission they needed the shuttles for.
Yep.
So to me, those shuttles are military built, and if they're under the guise that we're building this, they also built another launch pad for the shuttles. If that's getting to that degree, that's what part of the civilian is that? If it's actually designed and used by military.
So it's not used by the military.
Yes,
It is no, because the military, believe it or not, has their own shuttles, which are still in operation.
Okay, so you're telling me that they didn't say that the Columbia shuttles had to be designed and made for anything they needed to use it for whether it be spy satellites, any kind of satellite, or any space related, isn't the same thing? It is.
It isn't the same thing because the military shuttle is not the same as the civilian shuttle. Right?
Okay, then why would the civilian shuttle have to adhere to those details?
X-72, X-75, something like that.
Okay, but why would the NASA shuttle have to adhere to their specifications?
Because it's built by the government and they want the capability.
Okay, then it doesn't matter if they have military satellites or military shuttles. Their shuttle, the NASA shuttle, is going to be basically the same thing as those. Then they're built for whatever military or DoD activity they need in space. They're going to use those shuttles. Well, they have the same capability with the NASA one. Matter of fact, the NASA one had the biggest payload. It could carry a lot more than any of those military shuttles would be able to.
Yes. And the roads are built so that those tank carrying trucks can go on them, and that the military can deploy wherever they want in the U.S. within hours. And you're conflating, everything that you say is fine, but you're conflating it far too much. I don't know how you. Yes, military does use civilian services. Yes, civilian agencies can be used in the service of the military. Private companies, same thing. That doesn't mean that they are military.
I have an analogy. Sean.
Okay.
Okay, you've worked in construction, right?
Absolutely.
Do you build a dump truck just for your purposes or for every purpose?
Actually,
but when it comes to delivering material.
Actually, they do.
No, I'm just talking about specifically a dump truck. So can it carry sand? Can it carry rocks? Can it carry
Okay, yeah.
So it can carry all those different things, which all have different masses and weights and shapes and sizes.
Yes.
So wouldn't you design the shuttle to be capable of taking whatever you can get in?
Okay. Yes.
So not a
Except for the
dinky
fact-
little
okay.
satellite the
Okay.
size of a lunchbox,
Yeah, no. Okay.
but something that's going to be the size of a bloody bus.
Okay. So then what I mean is in that same analogy, if I have a dump truck and let's say the DOD came up to me and said, here's the specs of your dump truck. Why? Because we got these big ass boulders that know that nothing else can carry. We're going to build your truck to be able to carry them. In that, your truck's probably, I mean, if you're going to load everything else, it may not be necessary, or it may be able to work, but this is what your dump truck has to be built like, period. And if you don't,
Yes,
we're not going to help you.
But remember, Sean, you could only build it to a specific size, otherwise it wouldn't get into space.
Okay, but again, it's not that
Size matters.
Again, it's not that the shuttle was so universal. It was that the government funded it and said, if you don't make it to these specs for our use, we will not put any money towards the shuttle.
Yes.
That is very specific.
Yeah.
That's not a universal thing. It's more of a very specific, you're going to have a shuttle or you're not.
Well, hang on. On the other side of that coin, how do you know the DoD didn't ask them what is the largest capacity you're going to be able to get?
If you hit that if you hit that little live link, you should see,
because all of the documents have been declassified by now, and you literally can see what the requirements were and where they came from and where the funding came from, and like silly things like 90% of the shuttle turning out the way it did is due to politicians saying, oh, this needs to be built in Kansas and this needs to be built in Iowa because I need to employ this many people and fund the industry so that I get elected. Literally, like explicitly.
Okay.
It was a political truck.
Okay, I just put a link.
And the width of the booster is limited by how large a truck can fit on the road to transfer it from Iowa to Florida.
Okay, in the chat, I just put a link. It's called it's HHR 32 NASA Office in Defense Affairs. The first 5 years, it says the existing NASA and DoD relationship. Everything I just said came from that document alone, and that one shows. So when you go to that link and you go to the bottom and you go to the different pages, they start putting in what you're reading the actual documentation links that you can look and verify what was going on. And there are dozens of documents where the DoD is saying we will stop funding if these requirements are not met.
Yes.
Yeah, but you guys keep saying like it's just like I'm not heightening anything. I'm not saying anything's different. I'm literally telling you guys from here, and this document alone tells me that the shuttles were built for the DoD, for the military purposes, not for universal, just military. It had to make sure their specs were in, or they weren't.
So, and that's where you're overstating your case.
How?
They were built amongst other things for the military, and the military had an influence in how they were designed and how it was funded, and the military diverted parts of its funds to help build it under the condition that, but also there was a million different requirements on where it will be built, how it will be built, all of which were defining whether or not it will be built. It was not solo military operation. It was not built solely for the military purpose, which is literally what you have just said. You have said, no, it belongs to the military. It was built primarily and exclusively for the military. It is a military vehicle. No, it's not. It is the shuttle. Okay.
I mean,
it's for me. That's literally like saying it was built for the politics of Iowa.
No, that's like it's like what it is it's like go ahead, you guys can use it when need be, but if we need to annex your missions for ours, that's militaries. It's like just
Yes.
hang. Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, it's like you're saying, no, it's civilian. That I've never in my life I've had a military contract, and not once were they like, well, anytime we need your shit, we're gonna use it. And whether you like it or not, your equipment is ours. They never did that. That's not how a military contract works.
Okay, so
Sean, did you
there.
read that? Hang on, did you read that NASA took the Gemini program away from the Air Force?
Yeah, because that's more of an ICBM thing. That's why they started
No,
building
no, no.
shuttles.
It's because the DoD messed it up, and they were incapable of making the calculations for re-entry.
Okay, but that doesn't change anything. That just means that program they couldn't figure it out. Who funded it?
Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah,
NASA
they
said,
shut it down.
NASA said you're terrible. Give it to us, and we'll make it right. But yeah, of course the DoD's going to. But hang on. Of course, the DoD's going to want to put satellites in the sky.
Yes,
right?
of course. If we have the capability, we want to put satellites in the sky. We want to put spy satellites and weapon platforms and all of those things. And here are the dimensions and requirements in weight that we expect that we will have. Can
Yeah,
you satisfy
and if you
those?
don't-
If
and
you
if-
can, then this has a military purpose for us, and we can fund it out of our military budget.
Yeah,
And
you
if
get
don't-
monetary
and if-
gain.
And if they don't, we don't have shuttles. That's what it was about.
Yes, and if you don't get this many jobs in Iowa, you also don't have shuttles, because that senator will vote no and bring down the whole shuttle project, and
Wait.
not be.
If the military has its own shuttles, then why didn't the military just do it them damn selves?
Because their shuttle is smaller and it cannot be used under those circumstances.
Okay, why don't they
And
just
if-
build one
if
bigger?
you're-
I mean,
What?
if they're, why not just make one builder? Why are they putting all the money towards NASA's shuttle, which was funded primarily
Because
by
we have
by
a
military.
space agency, for fuck's sakes.
Huh?
It's because it's a space agency, right?
Yeah.
And if you're building something, make it useful for us as well, and then we'll fund the part of the money that you cannot get anywhere else.
Like
It's
90%?
literally same thing as IBM, right? IBM is a private company which produces computers, right? DoD doesn't go and build its own computers. It goes to IBM and says, "Hey, you want to build this new infrastructure? If it can then do this and this and this,
No.
we can divert a part of defense budget towards producing a special class of computers for us and making sure that this infrastructure is built for us." That does not make the IBM military.
Yeah, IBM's not making a program or a system for the military that we can all use either. You guys can use this system for your stuff,
yes, they are.
but you have to make it so we can do this inside of it too. Oh no!
So-
It's not ours. It's IBM's. But if IBM doesn't do it, then they're not allowed to do it at all.
So me wearing the moon boot I'm currently wearing means I'm part of the military.
Yeah.
Well, you know that it was a military project to produce the moon boot for rehabilitation purposes.
Yeah, but see, now they're not telling you, well, your foot is ours if we need it.
No. But by the logic
Your
that
foot
Barney
is there
just
if
described.
they need it.
Yeah. My foot is there for the military. My messed up foot is there for the military because I'm using military technology to help my rehabilitation.
Yeah, you
One
don't
thing
know
that
it. You don't realize it, but they have a chip in there.
That you look into is what all gets done with military funding. I bet that if you look into city planning, that they will have an obligation to consult with the DoD, and the DoD will be funding parts of city construction and giving out requirements for city construction, like city planning, where you can build buildings and where there will be parks and where there will be for their strategic military purpose. Does that make that city a military city? No, it doesn't. But in case of war, yes, those things will be used.
So does it have to be built by military, thought of and perfected by military to be military only? What's it called?
You cut out.
Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin's not military, but everything they built is militaries. You know, it's owned by the military. Why couldn't NASA and those shuttles be the same way?
Because Lockheed Martin is not military.
No.
The military is their biggest contractor.
Yep.
They're not
and everything
their only.
Well, not everything.
They're
I'm
not
sorry.
their only
Everything they build for the
Yeah,
military,
sure.
is theirs. The military,
Well,
right?
well, it's not just your military, Sean.
Well, yeah, I know that's a problem, but but that doesn't mean that NASA couldn't have built something that is the military's. The shuttle in question, that could be NASA could have built it, yeah, but it's still the military's. And if they're building, in my opinion, that's a very close relationship of military, especially when it's everything about it has to be, and they're putting under the guise that that's our shuttle, not the military's.
Yeah, but do you know how long the budget for the Air Force was incorporated into NASA before NASA got its own budget?
Like 3 or 4 years, I think.
Yeah, so NASA's infancy was directly tied to the military.
Yeah, no, that's I know.
But no, it's not.
You know, it is. No matter what you. No. NASA was NASCA, which was the military version. They changed the name when it became a civilian, but it is what it is, off a military agency. That's
the original. Yeah, Air Force pilots were the first astronauts. I mean, where do you come off saying that there was no military involved with NASA at its infancy? I mean,
I didn't say that.
That's the.
That's
yeah, I'm talking to Barney.
Okay.
I'm talking to Barney. I'm telling Barney off.
Okay.
I mean, geez,
No.
My Dream of Jeannie showed exactly what happened.
Same thing with Lockheed Martin, right? The statement is it does work exclusively for the military, except it doesn't. It produces civilian airplanes also. It's a company.
Yeah, but those
and this is an agency.
Look,
it is not part of the DoD.
Yeah, but Lockheed Martin, their civilian planes don't have to be built for the military use, whereas the shuttles were. And we're talking as if NASA was building other shuttles, like they built 2 shuttles, one for them and one for the military. No, the shuttle that we, as civilians, are paying out of our taxes, that we shouldn't be paying out of our taxes if it's military built. That's the argument of the case. That's the case.
What the fuck? What did you just say?
Okay, so
you civilians
how much
are not paying taxes to pay your military.
No.
Is that what you said?
No. Let me rephrase it. Let me make it make sense. Okay. NASA, so I pay taxes towards NASA,
Okay.
Correct? Yes. I pay taxes.
No.
Wait,
you pay taxes towards the government.
No. Okay. Yes and no.
Yes.
Yeah. No. Now listen.
Yes. Yes.
Let me clarify. Yes, government, but we don't pay one tax, so those taxes get allocated, right? That's what I meant. Yeah. Okay. So the military gets some, NASA and its agencies get some of that too, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if the military wants something built for the military, we're not supposed to be paying twice out of our taxes for that.
You're not paying twice.
You're not? So if NASA is building a shuttle, our taxpayer money doesn't go to building that shuttle?
It goes to building that shuttle.
Okay.
It goes to the military.
And if our military money tax goes to that, and it ends up being to the same thing, that's not right.
Why is it not right?
Because we don't pay taxes to Lockheed Martin. for Lockheed
No,
Martin,
but
progress.
Yes, you do.
How?
Yes, you do.
Okay,
You,
to the government, right?
Your taxes go to all of your military and all of your defense, everything.
Then why do they break it up? Why don't they
Exclusively
just
and
say your
only
government and that's
out
it?
of your
Then why is it?
There is no income that the military can possibly have other than your tax, right?
And if they can get more taxes, just adding it. So basically, okay, if the government said, well, we get this taxes and this can go to our military, and then that's only so much. So we tell the American people that this percent is going to the military and this percent goes over here. Well, if you take two of those agencies for one project, then you're getting twice as much paid for one project out of that taxes. Am I not wrong? Am I wrong in that? Am I wrong in what I just said?
I think your business model's a bit
You're
weird.
right, but you're not paying double taxes, and those funds aren't misappropriated.
No,
it is literally this agency is trying to do thing A. A costs more money than they have. The military says, hey, thing A is also useful for military purposes. If you make it to this specification so that we can also use it in the need, then we can divert part of our funding, which is literally 1,000 times bigger than yours. We can divert a part of our funding towards your project, and then you will have more money for that project, and that project will be built. And that's literally what has happened here.
Okay. Okay. So what? So would they have had the same amount of budget if NASA was through the military infrastructure only? We didn't have a civilian NASA.
No, because then the autonomy of NASA would be diminished by the military.
Okay, so if they then make one department of the government, like they did, a civilian entity, does that mean that they were able to then collect more money if said they were collecting those taxes as well? Just saying.
That's not how taxes work. They don't get a new agency and then they suddenly get to collect more money. They collect more money by making tax laws and saying you need to pay this much.
Yes, and you don't think a space agency brought more money? You don't think taxes didn't balance? They went up. That means they didn't go, oh, well, now we have a space agency, so now the military taxes go down and the space agency taxes go up. No, everything stayed the same, and then they have a space agency now, so those taxes go up too. Now, if they're making that money as well, that's more taxes, which is why I think they made it a civilian entity. That's more taxes. And it doesn't look military.
It's not how budgeting works.
Okay, well, okay. Again, if you think that, right, if $100 million is the cap for everything, you think that they go, okay, well, our military gets 80 and we're going to make a new agency and it has to stay under that? No, that's why taxes keep inflating every year, because they keep adding to these things. If it was a balance and everything stayed at a balance, and you're right, I would have nothing to say. Oh, they're still getting the same amount. No, they're not getting the same amount no matter what they do. The more agencies that they're able to work with that they add taxes to, the more money that goes into that whatever they're doing. I don't think that's right. I'm sorry. That to me it seems like bullshit. That's what I think. That's why I think NASA's so damn involved with the military. It's the realization that all you got to do is go, well, just make a space agency. Call it not government. The people will pay more, and it doesn't look like we're doing anything. Otherwise, everyone would know that those shuttles were built by the DoD, basically.
I don't think the shuttles were built by the Department of Defense.
The first ones were. 90% of the funding came from DoD.
I don't know.
And I'm just and on that I'm talking also what NASA, how NASA became. I mean, it was military, and I'm sorry, Blue, you were there.
No. Okay. Just a minute now.
Okay.
There was then and there still is parallel programs. The military has its own aerospace program. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and that was going on back in those days too. The forerunner of NASA. I can't remember the acronym for it now.
NASCA.
Yes, something like that. I can't remember it exactly right off the top of my head, but it was in parallel with the military program. We didn't want a civilian space program to be heavily involved with our military operation. That casts a shadow of doubt for everybody if you do that.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole world is going to sit and say, now, wait a minute. These guys are claiming they're just out there exploring space, but it's General is the guy saying, launch.
No.
And
but Blue, that's exactly what I'm saying. To make NASA a civilian entity takes those eyes away from what they're doing.
So
And
the
I think in that time
the
wouldn't have
US,
made more sense. Huh? Say again, Barney?
the federal taxes in the US went up with the war effort in 1941 and have been flat effectively since then at 15%.
Okay. Now add the space agency to that. What percentage is that?
The federal taxes, all of the taxes in the US,
Okay.
right? The state taxes have increased somewhat, but the federal taxes have been oscillating between 10 and is it 18%, let's say, but around a line of 15% since 1942.
on average, yeah.
Okay, but if you took the space agencies out of that, would the military get all what they get, or they allocate that through other stuff?
It's not separated. There's one overall federal budget.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
And
that's allocated, right?
Up amongst all of the various government, all the various things our government does.
Yeah.
The military gets part of it, but the military doesn't get a chunk of it that says, okay, you got to buy food for the soldiers with this, and you can buy tanks with this much money, and you're going to buy, you can use this much over here to make rockets and stuff. No, it doesn't work like that. It's really
everything that the country does is budgeted from the tax income. Yes, they can ask, you can elect politicians which will increase your taxes, or elect politicians which will decrease your taxes, but the government still has to fund all of its operation. Civil services, infrastructure, enticements, bureaucracy, everything, all of it, including the military sciences, research, academia, schooling, everything from that budget. That's what budgeting is.
Yeah, military is a small part of the budget.
Yeah, but
and NASA is an insignificant,
even smaller part. Yeah, tiny part.
Yeah. So, but all right, I'm trying to.
And then your assertion that they made this new agency so they would have two agencies so that they could get more taxes.
I think it's more so they didn't. I think it's more so that they didn't look like the military doing the stuff they were doing.
It's literally like saying, you know what? I'm going to buy another wallet. That way, I'll have twice as much.
Well, if you got a fat budget out of one, you may need to. No, but it was more of guys that
Hold it in.
Shut up, Barney. It was more that they didn't want to look military, and they needed an agency which they could do the things they were doing and not look so military. That is the beginning of why I think it is so adamant about it being a civilian agency. But that's, like I said, it's my opinion on it.
Sean, NASA never developed one single solitary ICBM, not the first one.
Well,
in the Mercury program is launch vehicle. They actually used
are not secret. They are advertised because it's their purpose. They're literally the weapons which you should never launch. That you have just so that you can explicitly say.
I'm not saying it clear. Can you guys hear me?
Half of percentage of taxes. It was the federal tax income, which is what the budget is based on, has been highest in 1942.
Yeah.
That part is now 10%, has been constantly going down. There isn't a peak. There isn't an uptick when NASA was founded to suddenly hike up the taxes or make more money or.
The taxes went up though, didn't they?
No.
Huh? So didn't you say that there's a way? So you're saying during Apollo and everything, taxes, people weren't paying more money?
Nope.
No.
Then how did they get funding?
You get it by taking away from from something else.
There wasn't a tax hike. There wasn't a tax increase. Right? They just budgeted for it from the budget, from the federal tax income.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense.
Why?
I don't know.
Well, it's just like what they do with Social Security right now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Did you guys want like an educated answer for why not? I'm sorry.
Like,
I know. I understand the theory.
let's say
I cannot
that
I can't catch them
that you
doing
decide-
anything. Therefore, they must be guilty of something.
No, I didn't say that either.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. I cannot find them doing one goddamn thing wrong. Obviously, they're guilty.
let's say the new Star Wars movie is coming out, and you want to go to the movie theater this week, right? And you're paid weekly, so now you're going to do something that you don't do every week. Do you go to your boss and ask for a raise because you're going to the theater? No, you budget for it. You're not going to buy that cup of coffee or that bagel. You're going to go to the movie theater instead, right?
Okay.
It will be.
Okay. Okay. So let me see if I
Or
understand.
maybe you do. Who cares?
I just put a image in the chat, and it says top federal tax rates. Now, just so I'm understanding what I'm trying to say and what you guys are trying to say, in this chart, throughout over the 100 years that they're showing,
Okay.
isn't that the rate of taxes that we were paying?
So that's the top. That's the top bracket. That's what the richest people were paying.
Okay, but they were paying, but it goes up and down, and they pay a little here. They paid a lot. So in 1926 through 30, they weren't paying so much, and then in 1944, they paid a shit ton.
Yes.
Okay, so how those taxes not when you say that they're not raising, or we're not paying a certain amount due to what agencies are being paid. That's what I don't get.
Because you're looking at the top bracket.
Okay,
you're looking at what is the highest rate that the richest people are paying to the highest bracket.
So if I look for a graph, you're telling me that a graph for just the average, the person that pays minimum, the lower bracket, what is it, middle class is not gonna be the same type?
Yes.
Okay, let's find it.
Do you know what brackets are?
Yes.
Right. Let's say first $1,000 have zero tax. The first dollar after that has 5%, and that goes for the next, I don't know, 1,000 until 2,000, and then until 10,000, and then until 50,000, and there is a top bracket. The top bracket from the 30s to the 60s was 90%. The top bracket, like what the billionaires paid to their income over $1 billion.
Yeah, Sean, right? Just quickly. Crash is like 60 away from making his Christmas budget.
Tell him to get that link out there.
No, he sent you a message and you didn't read it.
I didn't.
In the live stream chat, he tagged you just above your tax bracket.
Okay. All right, we're about 60 away from getting our Christmas done. Thanks to everyone. Oh, okay. Thank you, Digital. He says, FYI, Sean, we are about 60 away from getting our Christmas done. Thanks to everyone so far from us. I can't join at the moment. Don't worry about it, Crash. No problem at all, man. And if you need to throw that link out there, go ahead, please do it. Thank you, Digital. You gotta be so condescending when you tell me, though.
Yeah, because like it's I'm living on the surface of the sun right now, so.
Hey guys, so this is my favorite part. So throughout the day, I pop into like Discords or like and like different servers, and Digital share, like we share like pretty much all the same ones, and throughout the day, usually like in my midday or his morning most of the time, or at night, he just randomly tells people what temperature it is all the time. I have never been more up to date on Australian temperature than I have in the past week and a half.
Yeah, so it's just localized global warming, right? G'day, Terry.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I would hate to be a roofer right now down there.
Ooh, that's bad. Yeah, there you go, Terry. You're good to go now. Maxwell, you should be good to go too. Pretty sure you are. Yeah, you're good. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I'm not sure. I got the thing up. Like, here's a perfect example. Like, he sent this one just a little while ago in the chat. I see these all the time.
Because it said 111, and then
Fahrenheit.
Sean. Yeah, I changed it for your freedom units. Yeah.
Yeah, the correct units. That's hot.
What, where freezing's 32?
Yes, exactly.
That's like wrong.
No, it's correct.
No,
yes.
It's wrong.
Is 32 wrong. Fahrenheit freezing?
But freezing is balance.
Oh, fine. 0.
Thank you.
No, you're wrong. Stop that. 32 is exact. Blue, back me up, man. You're American.
32 is freezing.
There you go. See?
12 is boiling.
32 is uncomfortably hot.
You're at 111 Fahrenheit. You're at about, what, 45 C or 44 C, something like that.
44.
Well, you better get prepared because it's going to get a lot hotter. and I'll pull
How
some
hot,
chart for you.
It is.
how hot is it now? Digital.
Still 44, but it's 11:30 a.m.
Okay.
That is insane.
And we've got a storm front coming through in about 5 hours, and it's going to drop it by 13 degrees.
That fast? That's gonna be so comfortable.
Yeah, it's going to go from like 44, 45 down to 31.
Nice.
See, it isn't,
Back
like,
to springtime.
it doesn't really equate to me. You need to do it. You need to
That was
explain this
clear.
in more of a Fahrenheit way.
All right,
Which
give me 2 minutes.
All right, I got this. All right, Sean. Right now, on the blacktop, it is 111. There's a storm coming through in 5 hours. It will feel like that blacktop that you are working in the dirt.
You're a dick.
All right, Sean.
Not
Sean,
quite what I meant.
Sean.
Digital's
So-
going to leave the train station and travel east at 60 miles an hour. Okay.
All right.
The storm is leaving the East Coast, traveling westbound at 40 miles an hour.
You know,
When digital hits the storm, the temperature is going to drop 13 degrees.
you should be
Bingo.
you should be a weatherman, Blue. No. You should be Digital's weatherman. So Digital, from now on, just send Blue your information. Blue, when you see me, relay that information, please.
Here's the freedom units. Okay, so at 12:30 p.m. it's going to be around 111 to 115 degrees Fahrenheit. By 8:30, it will drop below 85.
Yeah, you do. You know what it is? I'm desensitized because you do that all the time. Everyone knows it too. Even Hannah in the chat said you do it. You're like Australia's meteorologist for the internet.
Yeah, bruh.
That's what.
Because I'm letting you guys know what it's like to touch the sun.
Okay, so this is what we're gonna do from now on, Digital. Doesn't matter what the discussion is. Doesn't matter who's talking. You have full right and power to do that, but you have to do it at least 3 times during the stream.
Okay,
Okay.
I can do that.
No. We're gonna broaden that. You gotta do it in all voice chats. Just randomly do the fucking weather. Because I will say it is awesome, and now I'm stuck on knowing what Australia's fucking weather is. And I will tell you right now, at 11 o'clock at night, 111 degrees Fahrenheit is not okay.
No, that's 11 a.m. right? That's in the morning. At 4:30 a.m. it was 34 degrees centigrade.
Stop doing that.
Oh,
man.
sorry, Celsius, because people hate centigrade, even though it's the same bloody thing.
I want Fahrenheit, please. Do you know this is American?
9/5 C plus 32. That's all you gotta know.
How about this? Yeah. Teach me how to distinguish. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the only thing in Celsius I know is 0. If it's
What
below
about
0,
the boiling temperature
shit.
of water?
If it goes above, oh shit. You said 44 to 38 so many times. I know that's hot. I don't know what it means though.
Yeah, just hot.
Yeah,
So
Really hot. Friggin' hot.
Yeah, but why can't you guys teach me? Teach me how to translate it. Go.
Well, you got to have points of reference, right?
Huh? No, I just need to know. Okay, 0 and 32. How the fuck did
That's
they
30.
equate that? Why is 32 Fahrenheit the number?
That's a long, tragic story, I'm afraid.
Wait, so hang on, Blue. I need to ask you a question then. Are we the stupid ones using Fahrenheit? Or is it...
You betcha.
Yes.
Oh, shit. Wait, look at this straight.
Centigrade weight makes so much more sense.
Oh my god. So, we fucked up. Is that what the F is? It's 111
Yes.
fuck up. Wow. That kind of hurts us so. Hey, we still got bacon, Blue.
That's true.
That's cool. That redeems all your problems.
Okay, so this is what you got to do. From now on, you guys got to only do Celsius and explain to me what it is in Fahrenheit until I figure it out.
Yeah, because -40 is the same in both. Yeah.
What? How?
Look it up.
No.
Look it up.
-40 cannot be both the same.
They are.
No.
-40.
No, God damn
It
it.
is. -40 centigrade and -40 Fahrenheit are exactly the same.
How is that possible?
Because it's fucking
Well-
cold.
Wait. Is that as cold as we can measure?
Oh,
No.
Okay. Is that as cold as a thermometer can get?
No.
Okay. Is that just some stupid shit you guys are telling me and trying to
No,
indoctrinate
That's where
my
they
brain?
overlap.
Or how is that
that's just
possible?
where the friggin' lines cross. That's
How?
where the lines cross.
How's that possible?
Well,
So wait, let me get this
we were,
straight. So 0 in Celsius, 0 to 10 is not the same as 32 to whatever. So what's
It's
10 degrees
the same.
Celsius?
To 42.
it's
No,
the
it's
same,
not.
it's the same as 32 to 50.
10 Celsius.
Yes.
10 degrees Celsius is 18 degrees Fahrenheit.
Why did they do this? It doesn't make any sense.
Dude,
Why did they make
makes
Fahrenheit?
perfect sense why they Fahrenheit came up. I
Why?
don't understand why you guys think it's so complicated.
It's very complicated to distinguish the two. And why did they do this?
Well, Fahrenheit was brought about to simplify the measurement.
What the fuck? It seems to have confused a lot.
I mean, that's why I don't understand why Blue thinks it's stupid.
How does it simplify it?
Because the freezing point and the boiling point are exactly 180 degrees apart.
And in Celsius?
In centigrade.
And that's what makes
Oh.
no sense. Why did we decide on 180 degrees, and why does 32 degrees constitute the freezing point of water? There is an answer there.
Wait a minute. So
The original 0 Fahrenheit had to do with the freezing point of some brine. I don't remember the whole story, but that's where that
The melting point
came
of butter.
or something. Yeah, some such.
I'm looking at the chart that Terry just.
It's all about the Masons, John. It's all about the Masons, Freemasonry, the
And now
Illuminati.
it's no longer.
And if you
defined
notice
as-
on the right-hand side, I've got
like
my own
that because
personal
all
chart. 'Cause that's my
imperial
middle name.
All imperial units are defined by SI units. So when you measure in inches and in feet, that literally is defined in meters.
Wait, so Fahrenheit and Celsius are almost two different ways of measuring something completely different?
Yes. Yes.
Two totally different
Exactly.
scales.
So then we are using it for the wrong scale?
There is no right and wrong in metric.
There has to be right and wrong, because I'm going to tell you right now, as I feel standard is the more American, I wish they would make up their fucking minds. I like metric. It's fun. It's better. It's easier to remember. Everything's a 10 or an 8.
Yes.
What the hell did
And
America do? What did we? I got to rethink everything except bacon.
We didn't do it. The goddamn English did it.
Why
Do
would
you
they do
know
that?
that the U.S. has switched to SI unit? U.S. has gone metric legally over 50 years ago.
We did.
How? Well, they simply defined imperial units in SI unit, right?
Yeah.
There is, if you erase the demeter, the foot would go away too.
see. Well, that makes sense. Why have they done this? That's what I need to know.
Because at some point somebody needed to measure things and came up with a stupid way to do it, and then somebody came up with a better way to do it, but everybody was already stuck with the stupid way, and people said, no, we're not learning another way of doing it. And like those aren't the only two ways of measuring temperature, right? There's also the Kelvin scale, and there are various different scales that simply didn't make it.
Damn. See?
Yep.
Life is so confusing.
But the metric is irrelevant as long as you define it. A metric in measurement is almost like semantics in conversation. If you define your terms, it's all fine. You can have a nonlinear metric, you can have a circular metric, you can have a radial metric, you can have a non-conformal metric, and they will all work as long as they're well defined. Nothing has to be straight equal definitions based upon. Those are just the easiest to think about.
Now I gotta figure out what I gotta learn Celsius.
Easy.
It's easy for you to say.
You only need to know three numbers: 273, 0, and 100. That's all you need to know.
Why? I'm
Well,
I know they're important. I know that 0 is important to know.
0 is the freezing point of water. 100 is the boiling point of water. And that's all there is to it.
Minus 273 is absolute 0.
Didn't they just actually past that or get below it or whatever it is?
No.
Or was that
do it?
I think it was what was it? In the computer model they did a simulation or something shit like that. They were able to do it.
I'm now a fire warden, Sean.
What?
Two fires have recently broken out in my state. One is about 30 kilometers north of my position. It started as a small grass fire and has rapidly grown out of control and is heading towards suburban areas.
Yay!
You guys got any rain birds?
Oh, you mean the ones that are fighting the fires in New South Wales? Those?
No. They're like you put your sprinkler system on your roof, and then you get your like I'm not sure what type of the majority of your roofs are, but if they're like that tar like we use here in America, you can actually get those things to absorb water, and if you get them soaked enough, then the ash danger isn't so bad.
No, we put real roofs on our houses.
Damn.
Yeah, but Sean, do you think that a city requires bushfire protection?
No.
Yeah.
Do you have a fire break in between you and the bush?
Okay, so where this fire started was out on a highway. So in between the highway, so in between the lanes, there's a grass area, right? And because it's so dry, either something was flicked or a spark from an exhaust or something caught it on fire. So, but because we've got prevailing winds at the moment that are heading in from the coast over this highway, it jumped the road and then got onto dry grasslands on the other side. They went up like a match, and it's just grown and grown and grown. And unfortunately, because the conditions keep changing, they can't do much to contain it because they don't know which way it's going to go.
Okay. So right now they're kind of in the sit and wait aspect of it. Because I've done a lot of here in California. We have the CDF, and I've worked with them. Oh my god, dozens of times. So I kind of had like. What was it? The last big fire we had in San Diego, a lot of the fires they'll tell you something, and when you hear it, it will never make sense in your brain. They say, "We got to leave it alone and see what happens." You go, "What?"
Yeah, because
Don't put that
so
fire
what they
out.
want to do is, wait for it to burn out its fuel source.
Yeah.
Because once it gets to the suburban area, there's not enough fuel to carry the flames.
Damn, you guys got a lot of fires in fucking Australia right now.
Yeah.
Like a lot. Like not. Who said it was a lot of fires one day and it wasn't? But you guys do. It's like your whole like everywhere. What the fuck is wrong with you people? You guys need to learn how to play with matches and shit. I'll show you guys what I'm looking at, I guess.
We could always move to the desert where there's nothing to burn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Told you I was on the surface of the sun, Sean.
Huh?
I told you I was on the surface of the sun.
That's not right. You guys need to get some ice water or something. You guys live next to Australia. Go get some of that ice. Those are ice.
But by the time we got the ice up here, it'd melt.
Well,
Not if we get a big
Move
block.
to Antarctica.
big cooler.
We just grab a big block of ice.
You got all that shit down there in Antarctica. Just go get some of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah, just
if
hope it
Blue
doesn't
says
contain
it
methane,
definitely is
correct?
real.
Yeah, hope it doesn't contain any methane.
For real.
What?
Or CO2. That's what you'd be worried about. It has more CO2, I think.
No, because methane's flammable, Sean.
I don't think it's flammable the same way. It's not like, we're hearing about cow farms going up in smokes.
Hey, when's the last time you've seen a cow burst into flames?
Yeah, exactly. It's a sad day here in Texas.
No.
All our cows just blew up.
No such thing as spontaneous cow combustion. It just doesn't happen.
And wait, damn it, Blue. Well, no, you would know things about methane, right? Like that was in your field of what you were doing.
I didn't. No, not really.
Okay. Because you do know, like recently they've lessened the regulations on methane. Like instead of like in there like telling industries like, well, keep storing it because someday it'll be worth something because basically the value of it's gone down or whatever. And now they're saying methane is nothing. Like it's not that big of a deal. So we don't need these regulations. What is that? Like what is the purpose of that?
I'm gonna find out. Natural gas.
But it's like that the EPA literally made methane like greenhouse gas top 10 warrant list 55 million times in the past and tried to tell everyone how bad it was, and now they're just like it's nothing. How is it nothing all of a sudden?
Damn, EPA hadn't been able to make their mind up on much of anything when it gets right down to it.
Yeah. That's
So in the 18 minutes that we talked, we have gone up 1 degree.
That's so awesome. I get my own weather guy.
Okay, so by 2 Fahrenheit. Okay, so 1 for me is 2 for you.
That's not how it works. All you're doing is confusing me now.
But Sean, in your units, it went from 111 to 113. In my units, it went from 44 to 45. Dude.
That's 2.
Yeah.
1.8, but
Don't.
See?
Blue.
What?
We're rounding.
What?
Okay. We're rounding.
What?
We're simplifying it for Sean, Blue.
I don't round. I want the right damn number.
Thank you, Blue. I appreciate that. And I just want to say in the YouTube chat, yes, Hannah, I am high. I'm sorry. I'm funner this way.
Funner?
Funner?
Shut up.
Funner?
I insist on accuracy, Sean. I require extreme accuracy in everything I do, which is why I chose to use 2 oranges to simulate the fucking solar system.
Yeah, okay, so I can understand one orange representing the sun.
I know I had an orange moon and an orange earth.
Didn't you have a grape or anything?
Did you write a letter? Did you write the letters on them?
Haven't seen the video? You have to look at the video.
Yeah, blue is now annoying orange.
Go there right now. Wait a minute. I can't.
What?
What is the title?
What was the title?
That
guy again.
Do you involve a mythical ideal in which science cannot be used to explain?
Huh?
I can't say it.
Me?
I'm not gonna say it. Digital or Sean, you guys got to help me out on this one. I'm not gonna ask him if it's what it is. But,
what do you need, brother? What do you need?
I was gonna check out Blue Marble Science's latest video, and with the oranges. But if it's a fantasy topic in which I'd rather not discuss, I can't play it.
Oh no, it's fine.
Okay.
It's real oranges.
It's actual oranges. Yeah.
Well, I mean, is it?
Yeah, no, Sean, just leave it alone. All right, leave it alone.
Do you know what I'm trying to say, though?
And I haven't watched it in its entirety yet. I've got to wait till tomorrow night.
Okay. Does it
Sean, leave it, leave it to Terry and us guys over at the Aussie Perspective to show it to you. Okay. When you have a look at one of our live streams, all right?
Okay.
But don't you engage in it because it will make you more thick.
Okay. We got it. Cool. We're good.
You saying Sean's thick and it'll just make him more thick?
No. See,
No.
I'm see. Not very many people even see. You guys didn't watch my upload. I no longer speak of fantasy ideals that do not use science to explain how it is observed. That's as far as I'll say. I'm not going to say it. I refuse to say it anymore. I'm not here. Not here. Man, see, I'm giving hints to you old people. You guys don't understand. Everyone else understands. I can't say it because if I say it, I say it. I'm not saying it. I refuse.
Well, don't say it then.
I'm not going to.
Well, type it.
Don't.
No, I can't.
No.
I can't. As long as this is you know what? I'll explain it when we get off. How long have I been on? Damn, we've been talking together for 2 hours already. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Terry, leave Sean alone.
That hurts my feelings. That means you guys didn't see my upload.
Sean,
and Crash, and hang on. No, I want to say this right now. Crash, I see your text. And I did read it. I read it already, man. Digital, tell him. Didn't I read his comment?
Yes.
Oh, he may not be able to hear me. He's not in the voice chat. But tell him. How can you get yelled at? It's not my fault. I'm trying to get back to my watch page. Right. Let me see. I think. Yep. I'm about done anyway. Like I said, I hate when I don't want to go do that. I really don't want to do like the 4 or 5 hour ones anymore.
Like I said, leave it to Terry.
It's Terry. Are you going live? Oh wait, hang on.
No, that's tomorrow.
What's today? Tomorrow night.
Hey guys. Well, there's people in the chat. I gotta get the rules too. My bad to anyone that has been fending for life without an admin role. I'm adding all the wrenches back to everyone. Just know now that when I add a wrench to you, I've gone to your channel, so I know which you are and which you're not. And some people may not get a wrench. And if you don't have a wrench and you've been here for a long time, you see people around you getting wrenches, it's probably you. So everyone should be good to go now. Are you going on? You going live, Terry?
No, I don't think I will. It's a bit early in the day for me.
Okay, so digital tells me to wait to watch it on yours. That's messed up, man.
Yeah.
I didn't say it.
Yeah, but the problem is, hang on. Oh, I see what the problem is. I got to give these guys the other role. Okay, here we go. Oh yeah, Crash can't get on here because I didn't even give him a role to be able to. I'm a dick. You guys can join the chat now. My bad. I told you I'm new to the Discord thing, so that's gonna happen. I'm like, well, Crash doesn't say nothing, but Crash can't even get on there.
Yeah, he can't get into the chat to say anything.
I'm such a dick. I'm like, yeah, come and say that shit to my face. Where you at? Yeah, you guys can join now. I forgive you guys the link. I'm sorry. I apologize. My bad. And anybody in the chat that wants to join the bunker, which is where I'll be probably streaming for. Oh man, I just fried my damn screen. I gotta do this shit again. Hang on. There we go. Gotta get a new computer. My computer's too slow. Wait, how do you distinguish whether or not you need a new computer, or are you just doing too much shit on it?
If you got to wind it up every day, it's too old.
Well, I don't know what you and Blue do, but I'm asking you about today's age.
Okay, so if you have to replace the valve tubes in it, it's old.
The valve? What the fuck is a valve tube in a computer?
They used to be in old TVs.
It's a glass vacuum transistor.
What the fuck is that? Hey guys, I'm 38 years old. I feel old, but I know I'm not old compared. So sometimes you guys talk about shit and it's like, what? A just what and who? So you guys said a TV had a what?
It's called a valve tube.
A valve tube. What is a valve tube?
Valve.
Blah, blah, blah. What does it do?
It's a transistor. It's a transistor.
Oh. Why don't you just say so?
Because, okay, so we went from wind up to valve tubes. Then what's the next thing? Silicon chips.
Silicon transistor.
That's more short on speed.
That's like the LCDs and the blue. Yeah, see. That's what our cell phones are made of. Young African kids sweat and tears. Good job, kids.
You know you need to change your computer, Sean, is when you turn it on for morning and then by dinner time it's warmed up.
Oh yeah, what about if you run it 24/7? Nothing.
Nothing.
No one wants to answer. It was like, I'm not telling them. You tell them. I'm not telling them.
Or if you tear it down and build it back up again, well, you know.
Well, I do that all the time, but that's just to clean it. In the rare cases that I actually decide to clean it.
Oh, you're like me. So like every 12 months you go, it's a bit warm. Maybe there's a bit of dust, and then you pull the side off, and you go, oh, it's more than a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And you want to know something worse? So now you have the central house system. You know, like you turn the system on, and there's a vent that's designated to pull all the air from the house in. Well, my computer's right next to it. So it's like, well, maybe most of the dust would be pulled past it. But I'm like, more than likely the dust is going to get pulled to it. So, yeah, when our central air goes on, it's badness. I hate it. And you guys would probably hear it. It would sound like jets taking off behind me.
G'day, Crash.
What do you do? Hang on, Terry, are you in a fucking rocking chair right now?
Oh, the chair.
You're in a rocking chair. You are old.
Yeah, I'm here now.
Hey, Crash, my bad. I was just, why doesn't Crash come in here? I saw you said you couldn't talk, but I was like, but he's not in the chat to hear me say I did. I said it. And then I realized your name and Jose's name were different. It was weird.
Yeah, I couldn't get in the chat to listen, so I was trying to listen on YouTube.
I'm an asshole. My bad. You know what? I think I'm gonna keep doing the Discord. I gotta figure this all out a little bit more. Like maybe Jose will help me or something because he's got it pretty figured out. Or you know what? No, I have tech guys for this, and I need to know where the hell they're at. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, you guys don't see it, but everyone on YouTube, this is my server, the Truth Frontline, and I'm supposed to have motherfuckers in here that like take care of all that shit for me, and they're not doing it. So I'm gonna yell at them. Don't worry about that. But links in the description if you guys want to join this one. Very quiet and chill place. Very, very chill. I don't remember the last time there ever was a fight in here. I don't think there ever was. No one gets angry here. It's so wonderful.
We can start one if you like.
No, Blue, why? Damn, you guys are
Can we call that guy?
Huh?
Yeah, let's get that guy in here. He'll get a fight started.
Get who guy?
That guy.
That guy.
Fight,
Tie a
fight,
knot in
fight.
it. Tie a knot in it.
Who are you talking about?
Not in it.
I don't know what you're talking
That
about.
guy.
Who?
No,
That guy.
Blue,
That
blue,
guy.
wait. Sean doesn't know these people anymore.
I've been gone for a little bit. I know you guys didn't notice.
Sean's been under the rock for a while. Okay.
No. Sean is under witness protection.
Yes, I ran away from my problems and I refuse to talk about them anymore. Digital makes it all weird. Like now I'm all like, I feel like I'm like hiding shit. I'm not. He just won't tell you guys what I mean. Tell them, damn it. Say it. Digital. Sean won't talk about anymore.
Yes. Sean will not talk about globe denying dummies anymore.
Thank you, sir.
See, I didn't even say the words.
I know you didn't. I was very proud of you for that. But I can't say that anymore. I will not. It's not. I won't even entertain it anymore. So, like, if
Sean will no longer entertain fantasies.
Yeah.
La La Land.
Yeah, I need science-backed shit because that's what I'm learning. That's what I understand, and you got to have some kind of scientific evidence. You got to understand something about science and how things work to make claims here. Damn it! Even if sometimes you don't, that's fine. But I will not entertain those. Put it this way, I've already entertained mud fossils, university. I will entertain that before I entertain the said name. Damn it. Just want to say that loud and clear now.
No.
You said too much.
I didn't say too much. How did I say too much?
On the grounds you may incriminate yourself.
Okay. Well, enough said then. But I'm just saying, some people said it would be difficult. It ain't difficult. Damn it. I see how it's difficult. I'm just kidding. I know, I'm just kidding. But I'm done. I'm tired. I'm done talking. I'm hungry. I got the munchies. Ooh, I got the munchies.
Pizza?
No. Actually, I don't know. I'm going for pancakes.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, I got the type of girl that was like,
With
"What do you want to
bacon.
eat?" And I'm like, "Pancakes," and she's like, "Okay." I'm like, "Fuck yeah!" You guys don't even know it. Half the time I'm eating pancakes. It's awesome. Oh, yeah. See, you don't get one.
You eat raw pancakes, or do you have something on them?
Did you say raw pancakes? That's
Yeah,
called.
well, you can have pancakes on their own, but it's obviously that you'd have to have some sort of
Oh,
covering
you
or
mean naked?
accompaniment to them.
You eat pancakes naked? No, that's wrong. I put syrup. And no, I don't ever in my life put vegetables or condiments like that on it. That is gross. But and people that put like stuff in their pancakes, blueberries and chocolate chips, you're wrong. It's wrong. It's dirty. Stop. No.
Ooh. Ooh.
Just saying, man.
What
Blueberries.
about peanut butter and bacon?
That's even worse.
Oh,
Did you say fucking peanut butter, dude?
and
What
bacon.
are you having, a peanut butter and jelly bacon sandwich? Damn,
That'll work.
man, you're taking it too far now. See, I am 100%. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Bacon, no. Our measuring system is garbage. I need to learn Celsius now. And I'm gonna go on a campaign for metrics.
Liters.
No, that's way too confusing. You guys need to change that shit. Think big.
Yeah.
That's your problem.
It's so much easier when you do things by tens.
What?
Well, centigrade, okay, it's a division of 100.
You're just confusing me.
Okay, 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters.
Okay.
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 Then we go 100 centimeters to centimeter.
Mm-hmm.
1,000 meters, kilometer.
Okay.
You go 10, 100, 1,000, and up.
So much easier. That's why the whole standard crash. I'm going on a campaign. I want to get rid of the standard or the SE or whatever SA, whatever you guys called it. I'm getting rid of the standard measurements. That is ridiculous. We're going to Celsius. We're leaving Fahrenheit alone.
Hey, Celsius are the standard. They're literally called SI units.
Okay, whatever. I want I want Celsius. I don't want Fahrenheit anymore. And I want the American
You're
people to
getting
stand
rid
by
of
me.
imperial and moving on to the standard.
Yes. Okay, that's what I mean.
Even Harley Davidson went metric, Sean.
See? This is what, if Harley Davidson does it, we need to do it too.
Even bullets are metric, Sean.
If bullets are metric, we need to be metric too. See? People, get behind me. Sean Gardner for president. I'm bringing metric back.
Hey, vote one Sean for president.
Okay, I think that's
9 millimeter, 45 millimeter, 7.62 millimeter.
I know what the problem is. I have smoked myself retarded for the night.
30 ounce 6, 357, 38 special, 22 long rifle.
That was Blue's
metric.
That was Blue's speech to his daughter's first date.
He said
"How you
45
doing?"
millimeter.
38 special. I got a shotgun right here.
I wish I had a 45 millimeter gun, digital. That's a good one.
Yeah.
45 millimeter.
You're trying to blow up a house? What?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called 45 caliber, not mil.
Did you
Your 9 millimeter is classified as the 45.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little difference there.
The big difference between a 45 and the 9 millimeter.
Well, yeah, that's what I said.
Yes, but the specs of the 45 were used for the 9 millimeter Beretta.
Yeah, you should probably shut up before you make yourself.
Yeah, us Aussies don't know anything about guns, Davros.
Oh
I was
yeah,
about
that's
to point
right.
that
Yeah.
out.
See, you guys.
We'll leave the
confuse me.
We'll leave the guns to the countries that have them.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the country that has all of them?
Hey, some of us can't own them, so I just have crossbows laying.
Oh, pointy stick.
You could have a water pistol.
Probably not.
Not a good idea.
He'd get
So
arrested for a Nerf gun.
Your state allows you to have a triggered mechanism.
Yes, because it's not a firearm.
All you need
Oh,
is the
you're
right
lucky.
permit.
Oklahoma doesn't let you have triggers. Period. If it's a crossbow, it's illegal. If it has a trigger, you can have a bow. Can't have a trigger though.
Have a
So,
slingshot.
Mac, if you get triggered in Oklahoma, does that mean you get arrested?
I get it. I got it.
I know where I won't be going deer hunting anymore.
Crash, you have the worst connection on earth.
No, he's got his $9 laptop. Just the internet connection is the problem.
It's a tablet.
Or tablet then. Tablet.
Or wait, is either two things. His connection is really bad, or he talks like that in real life.
Oh, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
No, nobody talks like that in real life. Come on.
Blue's like, no, stop. No one does that.
Walked up to you and said, "Hey."
Oh, that would be awkward. Yeah, I think we're gonna hope Crash does not do that. Oh, that's cute, Sean.
What's the rock, Sean? Sean.
45 on the right.
He's showing these shiny brass-looking copper things with the rounded end on them.
The pointy things, well, the rounded pointy things. That's a 9mm and a 45 side by side.
Oh, that's a 9.
Can you roll those over so we can see the names on them, please?
Yeah, it's like a 2mm difference.
That's a
Which end goes in the hole?
Turn it
the
around
point.
backwards.
Pointy end first.
And where do you light the bit of stuff on the top with the powder? You got to have a wick and a
on your
There's a little tiny hole. You stick a little fuse in it.
That's what she said.
Damn, I looked at that and thought it was a 22 laying next to the 45. I didn't realize how damn small 9mm really is.
Oh yeah, if someone has a 22, show that one. That looks like a little BB. It bounces around like one too.
Yeah, even though I just explained the metric system, you didn't realize how small.
No, man, I'm done thinking for the night. I saw bullets. I want to see the names on them first. So I don't care about the sizes. I just want to see whose names on them. Isn't that how you guys do your bullets too? Put names on them and no one else does that, huh?
I have too much ammo to put names on.
Yeah, but don't you feel like you want to sometimes? You just put a couple names on them and then send them. Never mind. Never mind.
That's why I leave the guns at home.
Never mind. All right, guys, I'm gonna get out of here, but I'm not gonna get out of here. Let me see something. You guys can hang out here, or you guys can disperse, and I'll find you. I'm gonna mute myself for a second so I can get off the line on YouTube.
Oh, hold on 1 second. I'll show you. I've got 5 different sets of ammo here.
Okay. So Also,
Yeah.
I want to say, make sure you don't go near Sean's house. Sean has a lot of ammo. Most people that have said ammo don't usually, let's say, have not what it goes to. So, not a place you want to do. Be aware.
Yeah. No, I've got every one of these.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
just showed. I just put a picture up of the bullets we can buy legally down the supermarket.
Oh, that is so cute right there. You see that little tiny bullet right there? That thing's. Here's the thing.
Is that a 222, Sean?
No, he's got a
So-
22 regular. He got a
22.
22 Magnum, 9 mil, 45,
Yeah.
12 gauge. Looks like 2 and 3.
Okay, so Maxwell has
Yep.
also stated he knows bullets, which means he knows what they go into. Don't go near his house. Anybody else? Wait. Digital and Terry have already stated that they are limited on their amount of bullets they are allowed to have or types, which means they have not many guns, but they probably like them. So
No,
they
I just
Yeah,
showed
we've
you.
got-
We can
they're
buy bullets by the
Australians.
day.
They're Australians, so they most likely have a very pretty knife.
But ours are a
Actually-
different colour though. Those bullets.
Yeah,
I
hey,
prefer-
Sean, this one has a name on the side of it.
Oh,
I prefer a cricket bat.
I can't read it, but I'm sure it says federal.
yeah. I don't want to read that because I don't want them knocking at my door. I'm reading the book that says.
Federal.
Yes, if your name is Federal, you're fucked. Stay the fuck away from Sean's house.
That's definitely says federal. No doubt about it.
Yeah, I'm reading
Yep.
it now.
So if your name is
Yeah.
Federal, again, stay away from his house. For your sake and
Everyone-
mine.
And don't forget about Blazer. Blazer is also not supposed to be at my house.
Excuse me?
That's the name of the ammo.
Oh my god. Jeez.
Blazer. I've got Federal, Blazer, Magtech, CCI, Cellular and Below,
All Sean's doing right now
Winchester.
is he's saying, don't come to my house.
Don't come over here with no jive.
So, let me see. I got some other people that are coming in. So, yeah, I think what I'm going to do is I'm most likely going to definitely be streaming probably from here for a while. I'm going to get used to it, so it'll get better. But I like this. I like this setup. I like this one a lot better. Makes more sense. I mean, still alive everything, and I can mute anybody I want. That makes me even happier.
Or just kick them out of the server.
There you go. And that's just the way it is. Okay.
You see it. I tried to when I'm live streaming. I go sometimes. I've ducked over to the live streams on Discord. It doesn't go down too well sometimes because people don't realise that they can hear each other.
Yeah, I've been in that. You do this weird thing where you link everything. So we're talking like Zoom chat, YouTube meetup, and then like a Discord. I'm like, I don't know where I am. Everyone's like has to be at the Discord, but it's just it's a ploy. Because you get to Terry's
Terry.
Discord and everyone's muted on there and they're all talking. You're like, what the hell is going on? Yeah, so I'm going to mute myself now for real this time, and I'll be right back.
Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah. So guys,
We'll take over.
Go ahead and do this. So like I said, guys, that was fun. That was a good open discussion. I didn't stabilize nothing, but I'm gonna get some other things going on. But yeah, again, fun place, hang out, whatever. But staying away from different topics that just aren't necessary, in my opinion. If you have an argument for anything, it doesn't matter as long as you have the science to back it. Then we can talk. Other than that, guys, I'm gonna get out of here. I'll be around Pine tomorrow. We'll see. I'm not 100% sure, but I do appreciate you guys being here so damn much. It means a lot. It does mean to me that there's a reason that I'm here. So thank you very much. Peace.